So last night you found yourself in a bar in Amsterdam called Mexico City, and you met someone named Jean-Baptiste Clement who described himself as a judge penitent. He told you he would be here again, he would be there again the next evening. And so as you read chapter 2 of The Fall, it's the next evening, and we're just picking up what you might want to call a conversation, but it's much more of a monologue here. It's just Jean-Baptiste Clement reminiscing. So evidently you have asked him what being a judge penitent means, and he's still not ready to fully answer that question. Now, as he goes on to talk about what he does want to talk about, it's maybe a little bit obvious, but we want to say that the book is called The Fall. And so in order to fall, you have to be up high. And so in the previous chapter, we've had a lot of references to the sky, the fog, the air, the fog that the jinn produces in the mind, and then references to hell and the lowest circles of hell. So already references to highs and lows in a physical, symbolic way, but also in a literal way and also in addition to a literal way, a figurative way, talking about guilt and innocence. And so now he's going to not explain what it is to be a judge penitent, but rather tell you the story of his life. And so he used to be a lawyer in Paris, and he specialized in the widows and orphans. So in the New Testament, the brother of Jesus named James says, "True and undefiled religion is this, to care for orphans and widows in their distress," James says. And so just like everything in this novel is an ironic secular twist on the Bible. Obviously, the fall is a reference to the Garden of Eden. And so now this lawyer, this former lawyer who is now judge penitent, he did what was called in Christianity the true religion, which is to take care of widows and orphans. Now, he did this to be on the right side of the bar, and the right side of the bar might surprise us. He did this to be anti-judge. Well, what's the chief sin of the Pharisees in the Bible? Well, they are judgmental. They act like they have no problems, and they put sin and the burden of laws that they made up on other people. And so to be a judge in the Bible is to be the only group of people that Jesus seemed to hate, were the Pharisees, the judges. And so he takes care of widows and orphans, and he does so in order to be on a different side of the bar than the evil judges. And he says, being on the right side of justice, being right, being up, being unfallen, being Edenic is so important that one time there was a man who was unfaithful, untruthful to his wife, and she was such a saint about it that he ended up having to kill her because he couldn't live with someone better than him. Obviously, an allusion to Christianity there. We can't stand to have someone morally perfect. You think your teeth are white, and then you put on a brand new T-shirt, and all of a sudden you see, in contrast with a bright whiteness, how dirty your teeth have become. And so, morally speaking, the last thing you want to be is married to someone who has the upper hand on you. So we want to be up, we want to be innocent, and so he's taking care of widows and orphans. He's not being a judge. Why? Because we can't bear the weight of being morally inferior to someone looking bad. And so for his services, he tried not to take any awards or recognition. He tried not to take any money. But it's not just vocationally, not just as a lawyer. Even out on the busy city streets, he died to see a blind person that he could guide on a crosswalk. He died to give people directions. He dove all over town to do all sorts of things like helping ladies with their luggage on the rack, giving up his seat at the theater, giving money whenever possible. He did all these works of good charity and good deeds outside of his vocation as well. And he says that the payment he got was in the not getting payment. Because you know what's better than $1 million? It's a widow whispering into your ear after you've defended her that she can never repay you and that you're such a good person. So by not taking payment, his payment was the credit he got. And so that transferred itself in a very literal way, where he always had to be on the top floor, always on the top deck, always looking down. He always had to be up. He could never be on the bottom, because to be up is where you can be seen and where you can be recognized. And he says what that bought him was in court justification. Because where is the one place you want to be in court? Well, you don't want to be accused, because there's a pretty good chance that you might be guilty if you were standing there accused or penitent. But you also don't want to be the judge, because who's going to have the exactest standard applied to them? Who is going to be judged themselves? Well, the one who judges everyone else. So where is the ideal person to be justified in court? Well, it's to stand next to the criminal, opposite the judge. And so by that way, you can be in court, but you can be acquitted, because you're standing next to people presumably worse off than you, pathetic people, awful people, the lowest of the low. And then you have got the self-righteous judge looking down his nose at you, and you are neither of those people. And there you can find justification. Then he says, he uses explicit Christian atonement language. He says that the people he defended were his expiation. And that is a turning aside of guilt, or a turning aside of wrath. Christians say that on the cross, Christ expiated the wrath of God, and the payment for sins was made because someone else took the guilt. And so Jean-Baptiste Clement says that that's what me being a lawyer was. The people I was defending, they took the expiation. And he said, by the way, not only in my job and in my personal life was I a good person, not only that, but I wasn't some self-denying monk. I enjoyed sex. I enjoyed pleasure. People wanted to be with me. People wanted to live with me. And I took great pleasure in all those things. But he said, I realized that nothing ever satisfied me, that I would wake up the next morning and it didn't matter how great the night before was, it just left a longing. And so if you've ever had a giant campfire, the more wood you throw on the fire, the more the flames roar, but the more wood it needs. And so you just keep feeding and feeding and feeding an addiction, and there's an absolute insatiability, and that's what he found. Which reminds me of a quote of someone who is a contemporary of Camus, C.S. Lewis, and it's interesting how he looks at that exact same insatiable quality of life and takes it in the exact opposite direction of Albert Camus' absurdist philosophy. And Lewis looks at the exact same feeling about being in an insatiable body in an insatiable world and says this. The Christian says, creatures are not born with desires unless satisfaction for those desires exist. A baby feels hunger, well, there is such a thing as food. A duckling wants to swim, well, there is such a thing as water. Men feel sexual desire, well, there is such a thing as sex. If I find in myself a desire which no experience in this world can satisfy, the most probable explanation is that I was made for another world. If none of my earthly pleasures satisfy it, that does not prove that the universe is a fraud. Probably earthly pleasures were never meant to satisfy it, but only to arouse it, to suggest the real thing. If that is so, I must take care on the one hand never to despise or be unthankful for these earthly blessings, and on the other, never to mistake them for the something else of which they are only a kind of copy, or echo, or mirage. I must keep alive in myself the desire for my true country, which I shall not find till after death. I must never let it get snowed under or turned aside. I must make it the main object of life to press on to that other country and to help others do the same. And so living after the Holocaust, the horrors of World War II, Camus would take an entirely different take on that and say, rather, you need to live as though there is another world. You need to live as though there is purpose, but this is just a purpose that you have created. To live a truly absurd life is to smile in the face of nothingness and meaninglessness, and to create your own meaning through teamwork, through what you know to be good. Then he goes, after talking about insatiability, then he goes into a digression about friendship. And this is where the cracks in the heights, the cracks in the Garden of Eden, in his own self-justification, begin to show. Because he talks about the idea of friendship. And that is the one relationship, again echoing a book of C.S. Lewis about the four loves. And he talks about friendship love. And that is, in a sense, one of the hardest loves, because it requires so much more than it gives back often. And Camus, again like Lewis, notices the same thing, which is friendship love is a real revealer of our hearts, in that we want friends, but to be a friend requires so much more than we would often reckon with. And he said the best way we can be a friend is to a dying person or to a dead person. And that's because a dying or a dead person require very little of us. So it's a lot easier to play the part of a friend than it is to be a friend. So Camus on friendship, there's some great lines, great wit, but I think the important point he's making is that friendship reveals just how self-centered we are, just how double we are. And so as the cracks start to show, we're getting toward the end of the chapter, or the main part of the second chapter. And he says, in fact, in my job, I used to shake everyone's hand, go around, make a big scene. But I realized that I was doing it so that I would be missed. And so we're starting to get a hint. We're starting to get a preview, a foreshadow of what the book The Fall might be indicating. That he continued to do good works like shaking people's hands, being friendly, being nice. But in actuality, it was about him. And friendship is the one relationship that even we give, but we don't get very much back. And so at work, he realized that all this handshaking was really so that he would be missed. And then we get to the key part of this chapter, alluded to, previewed in the previous chapter. Remember, Jean-Baptiste Clemens was going to walk us back to our hotel after leaving the bar, but he stopped short of the bridge, and he says that he made a vow not to cross bridges, because only two things could happen on a bridge, potentially, and that is if somebody were to fall in, then you would have to save them, or you would have to deal with the guilt of not being a savior. So again, the title of the book is The Fall, and again, we're on a bridge, and this is the key part of chapter 2. I was not bored because I was riding on the crest of the wave. So this is not an existential crisis. He's fine. He's happy. On the evening I am speaking about, I can say that I was even less bored than ever. And yet, you see, cher Monsieur, it was a fine autumn evening, still warm in town and already damp over the scene. Night was falling. The sky, still bright in the west, was darkening. The street lamps were glowing dimly. I was walking up the quays of the left bank toward the Pont des Arts. The river was gleaming between the stalls of the second-hand booksellers. Beautiful setting of Paris. No crisis, no suffering, just a happy person in a beautiful place. There were but few people on the quays. Paris was already at dinner. I was treading on the dusty yellow leaves that still recalled summer. Gradually, the sky was filling with stars that could be seen for a moment after leaving one street lamp and heading toward another. I enjoyed the return of silence, the evening's mildness, the emptiness of Paris. I was happy. The day had been good. A blind man, the reduced sentence I had hoped for, a cordial handclasp from my client, a few liberalities, and in the afternoon, a brilliant improvisation in the company of several friends on the hard-heartedness of our governing class, in the hypocrisy of our leaders. So he's feeling healthy, happy, he's in a beautiful place, he's doing well his career, he's even saying all the right political things. I had gone up to the Pont des Arts, deserted at that hour, to look at the river that could hardly be made out. Now night had come. Facing the statue of the Vert Gallant, I dominated the island. He was above everyone on the island. I felt rising within me a vast feeling of power, the opposite of fallen. And I don't know how to express it, of completion,
which cheered my heart. I straightened up and was about to light a cigarette, the cigarette of satisfaction, when, at that very moment, a laugh burst out behind me. Taken by surprise, I suddenly wheeled around. There was no one there. I stepped to the railing. No barge or boat. I turned back toward the island and again heard the laughter behind me, a little farther off, as if it were going downstream. I stood there motionless. The sound of the laughter was decreasing, but I could still hear it distinctly behind me, come from nowhere unless from the water. At the same time, I was aware of the rapid beating of my heart. Please don't misunderstand me. There was nothing mysterious about that laugh. It was a good, hearty, almost friendly laugh, which re-established the proper proportions. Soon, I heard nothing more. Anyway, I returned to the quays, went up to the Rue Dauphine, bought some cigarettes I didn't need at all. I was dazed and had trouble breathing. That evening, I rang up a friend who wasn't at home. I was hesitant about going out when suddenly I heard laughter under my windows. I opened them, on the sidewalk, in fact. Some youths were loudly saying good night. I shrugged my shoulders as I closed the windows. After all, I had a brief to study. I went into the bathroom to drink a glass of water. My reflection was smiling in the mirror, but it seemed to me that my smile was double. So what happened on that bridge? He heard a laugh. He turned around and there was nothing, and the sound could have only come from the water. Oh well, he shrugs it off and buys a cigarette he doesn't need and goes home and hears a similar laugh that jars him. And that laugh triggers something. The laugh under his apartment window on the street triggers something about earlier in the evening and the laugh that he heard. And whatever it triggered made him see in the mirror that he is double. This whole chapter has been about what a self-righteous, good person he is. How he did all these wonderful things. But now on the bridge and the apartment, he has heard two laughs. The second laugh interpreted his first laugh, and it seems to interpret his whole being, his whole life. What happened on that bridge, or what happened under that bridge? What fell into the water that sounded at first like a laugh, but in the context of the second laugh, was it? And so something has made this man vow not to go on bridges. That something is that only two bad things can happen. Either you jump in and save someone, or you didn't save someone and have to deal with it. That's chapter 1. Now chapter 2, he's not talking metaphorically. He's telling a real story of something that happened in his life. And whatever it is, it made him be a double person. So as this chapter comes to an end, we get the last word of chapter 2 on his profession as a lawyer. I inspire confidence, don't I? I have a good hearty laugh and an energetic handshake, and those are trump cards. Besides, I settled a few difficult cases out of self-interest to begin with, and later out of conviction. If pimps and thieves were invariably sentenced, all decent people would get to thinking they themselves were constantly innocent, cher monsieur. And in my opinion, all right, I'm coming. That's what must be avoided above all. Otherwise, everything would be just a joke. So what is the point? The point is that common people can't always find someone worse themselves. If your idea of morality is just being able to say that you're morally superior to someone, then everyone can find someone worse than they are. And so Jean-Baptiste Clement, he's going to defend the unlovable so that the normal person can't walk around with a self-righteousness, that they can't be a judge, that they can't be a Pharisee. Otherwise, this whole world would be absurd.